Well, President Trump has described big game hunting as, quote, a horror show. Still, his administration has expanded the list of countries from which the heads and hides of animals can be legally imported into the U.S. as trophies. Well, I'm joined now by Kitty Block, President and CEO of the Humane Society International, to talk more about this industry. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So let's start with the Humane Society's undercover investigation of the Safari Club. Talk us through what's happening.
Sure. So we go pretty much every year where it takes place, and this is it's a grotesque display of animal carcasses, and it's not just animals that are stuffed fully. It's hides, it's heads. One year there was an ear of an elephant where they did a painting on it. I mean, this is really just trophies and bragging rights and a culture of wealthy individuals getting to go kill animals.
So then what are some of these international organizations doing about this trophy hunting, especially canned trophy hunting, these animals that are bred in captivity?
Sadly, it's not banned, and a lot of international organizations can't do anything really about this. But it's this public outcry that's growing. It's federal legislation that we have introduced that will really get at this. Canned hunting is when lions are hand-fed, hand-raised, and when they're young, they pose with people for pictures. They get a little older, they do some other kind of activity, and then when they're older, they just put them in these enclosed areas to be killed.
So then as we sort of compare the industries with the sort of the tourism that comes with wildlife versus the sort of money that comes from trophy hunting, do they stack up evenly?
Not at all. The money that comes in from killing animals, you can only kill an animal once. But when you have ecotourism, people come to take photographs, you can watch that animal, take pictures of that animal over and over again, and it pales in comparison. A few million for trophy hunting and billions for ecotourism.
So why do you think then there isn't as much focus on the ecotourism part, and there still is so much interest when it comes to big game hunting?
But see, that's where it gets confusing. It's not a lot of interest. There are not really that many trophy hunters, but they are very wealthy and they are very prominent. And the U.S. is home to the greatest number of trophy hunters. And so there are lots of people going on activities and doing great things and going on vacation with their families, but there are not these few select individuals that get the attention.
Now, we did see, obviously, a lot of backlash after Cecil the lion was killed in Zimbabwe, and that really, again, brought trophy hunting back into the spotlight. Have we seen much progress since then?
There has. There's a piece of legislation, the Cecil Act, that has been introduced in Congress, but it really woke people up to what this actually means. People paying, thousands and thousands of dollars to travel to parts of the world and kill these majestic animals. And Cecil, of course, was a protected animal, and he was lured out of this protected area. He was collared. He was being studied, and he died. It took something like over 10 hours for this animal to die. So undeserving, so unnecessary.
So then when you look at some of the arguments for trophy hunting, they say it's a way to fund conservation efforts. What's your take on that?
It's self-serving. That's a self-serving argument. If they wanted to really help conservation, they can directly donate to conservation efforts. This really is about a trophy. That's why it's called trophy hunting. They want those bragging rights. They want the animals that have the biggest tusks, the darkest manes, so they can put them on their wall and be proud of what they've done.
Now, what about this line between, obviously, trophy hunting, but then you also have culling, which is a standard practice for a lot of farms and wildlife reserves in countries like South Africa. What's the argument against charging people to hunt these animals if they're going to be killed anyway?
Well, culling is problematic, and a lot of countries actually cull because they want to stockpile the ivory or the other things for sales later, and they put pressure on international agreements to open up sales in ivory and other things. There are so many ways to actually keep populations humanely down. We work on it. We work on immunocontraception with elephants, so they don't have to be killed. That's not a real argument.
So then give us some ideas. You touched on one of ways to sort of help with culling without having to resort to hunting.
Well, you don't have to cull them. You don't have to kill them. A lot of times when they say there's conflict with humans, you can put up fencing. You can do so many other things. The go-to is culling really because they want to stockpile the parts in animals to trade them later.
Now, for many people, they may not be familiar, but the big five, the lion, the leopard, rhinoceros, elephant, and the Cape or African buffalo, known as the big five, they're the hardest to hunt on foot and considered the most dangerous. Now, they get a lot of the attention, but what about those sort of that fall outside of that, giraffes, impalas, etc.? What do we know about what's happening with their populations?
It's a great question. Giraffe populations are really in trouble. 400 trophies just a year, and the population has decreased by 40%. these animals, giraffes, their parts, and especially at the Safari Club show, boots for something like over $1,000 for giraffe boots. These are gentle beings, gentle creatures. They should not be hunted down the way they are.
And so when you look at trophy hunting, does it blur the lines then when it comes to things like poaching?
Poaching is taking animals, obviously, when it's illegally done. Trophy hunters just pay a really big price. They pay the money and they get to kill them. And it doesn't decrease. So I've also heard the argument, well, if we're trophy hunting, we're putting to efforts towards keeping poaching down. Well, that doesn't happen. In places where they're trophy hunting, poaching is higher than any other place.
Well, certainly a lot of good information there. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Kitty Block there, President and CEO of the Humane Society International.